What makes a woman a Proverbs 31 woman? I've always found it very interesting that the virtuous woman or the capable woman or the woman of noble character, it's Esek Chayil in Hebrew, is praised from verse to verse for her actions, for the things that she does, how she's managing her home, how she's going about her business affairs, how she's reaching out to the poor and making her clothing and procuring her food. It's all about what she does. And yet at the end of the passage, in verse 30, it says, "It is for her fear of Yahweh that a woman shall be praised." So why didn't they just do that? Why did they not just praise her for her fear of Yahweh? The vast majority of what's detailed in this passage is about what she's doing in her home and what she's doing in her business. It's about her duties and her responsibilities and her tasks. It doesn't really sound very spiritual to me. I mean, there's nothing in here that talks about her studying scripture or fasting or even praying. There's not even an emphasis on her morals and her moral character in this passage. I mean, there's a couple of verses in there, verses 25, 26, and 27, when it talks about strength and honor, her clothing. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is kindly teaching. She looks well to the ways of her household and doesn't eat the bread of idleness. Those three scriptures, maybe you could kind of say this is talking about her moral character, but that's only three in this whole passage, and all the rest are talking about her tasks and her accomplishments. So what am I missing here? It says that she'll be praised for her fear of Yahweh, but then it praises her for all of these tasks that she's doing and for the different ways that she's serving her home, her family, and her community. What is the fear of Yahweh? Is it as intangible and as semi-ambiguous as I've always understood it? Meaning the fear of Yahweh is simply to respect Yahweh or to be aware of his authority to condemn us or to give us eternal reward? Or is perhaps the fear of Yahweh more practical and hands-on and active and congruent with what is described of the Proverbs 31 woman? Bible study time. Let's break our Bibles out because the scriptures define what is the fear of God. In Proverbs chapter 8, verse 13, the fear of Yahweh is to hate evil. To hate evil. That actually indicates a lot. Because for one, to hate evil, you have to recognize that there is a supreme authority. There is a God who gets to set standards of morality, who gets to determine what is right and what is wrong. And not only that, but he has done that. He not only has the power to do it, but he has in fact set standards of morality and consequences for trespasses against those standards of morality. So there is a right way to live and there is a wrong way to live. And there are repercussions for that in our day-to-day life. So 3, a person who fears Yahweh is going to not only be conscientious about the way that they live, but they are going to go so far as to abhor what that supreme authority, what God says is evil and wrong, and they are going to pursue and chase after and conform their own ways to what he says is good and righteous and holy. Because, which would be number 4, you respect him as God, as authority, as having wisdom and understanding that surpasses your own. So the fear of Yahweh is to hate evil is much more than just having respect for God as God or being aware that he's a judge that can condemn you to eternal separation from him if you disobey him, and etc., etc. The fear of Yahweh is joining our life to him and conforming our ways and our lifestyle to his ways and to what he says is good. Is very much beyond head knowledge and simple awareness that he's God and that he is an authority and that he is a judge, and moves to actually an action in our life that testifies to the fact that he is God, that represents him, that represents his character as God. Proverbs chapter 2, verses 1 through 5 says that if we want to understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of God, we should seek after wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So where do we go to seek out wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, which is instruction? Where do we go to find out what God has defined as evil and what he has defined as righteous? We go to his word, right? Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 5 through 7 very plainly tells us What is wisdom and understanding? Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahweh my God commanded me. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as Yahweh our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Yahweh's commandments are wisdom and understanding. Even the nations know that. But it's when we keep and do his commandments that we are actually fearing Yahweh. It's only when his word impacts us and sets us apart and changes our life and the way that we live our life because we know him, because he is our God, because we are his people, that we are actually fearing Yahweh. Wisdom and understanding unacted on is not fearing Yahweh. We know him, we recognize him as God and all that that entails, and so therefore we conform our ways for his wise ways. We are repulsed by what is evil and what is contrary to his design, and we love and we seek after and we live out what he says is good. The fear of Yahweh is to hate evil, and to understand the fear of Yahweh is to seek out wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. I would suggest to you then that the Proverbs 31 woman is compelled in all that she does by her fear of Yahweh. It is her fear of Yahweh which directs her actions in her home and in her business and in her community. It is the fear of Yahweh which shapes her character and how she navigates the many responsibilities that she has. It is because she fears Yahweh and hates evil that she looks well to the ways of her household and doesn't give herself over to idleness and slothfulness and selfishness. It's because of her fear of Yahweh and that she hates evil, that she does her husband good and not harm all the days of her life. It is because her fear of Yahweh and because she hates evil that she feeds and clothes her family and prepares them for the winter season ahead and has a sober mind in her business and with her tongue. All of these actions and tasks and activities that she's busying her hands with are the fruit that naturally produce along with her fear of Yahweh. The fear of Yahweh is an action. It is conforming our life to his ways. And so now it makes sense to me why, following verse 30, it is for her fear of Yahweh that a woman is to be praised. It says, give her of the fruit of her hands and let her own works praise her in the gates. Fear of Yahweh inherently produces fruit. And so that's what all of this is describing. This is describing the fruit that comes from her fear of Yahweh, from her hatred of evil, her love for what is righteous, the evidence of her faith in Yahweh that she is his and that he is her God.